Imagine it's, a Thursday afternoon in our current year of 2026.
Sounds nice already.
Right. You've just used your company's latest generative AI tool to basically blast through all your weekly reports, your data syntheses, and client emails in, I don't know, about 15 minutes.
A completely frictionless afternoon.
Exactly. So you should be packing up your bag, heading out the door, and kicking off a well-deserved 3-day weekend. I mean, that was the promise,
It
right?
was the ultimate technological utopia.
Yeah, where the machines handle the grind and we just sort of sit back and reap the rewards. In fact, if you look back just a couple of years to the initial Gen AI explosion, McKinsey was projecting this tech would add up to $4.4 trillion in annual value to the global economy.
Right, which is just a staggering number.
But it's a beautiful vision. The only problem is, well, when you look at the actual macroeconomic data, that utopian Thursday afternoon doesn't really seem to exist for anyone. No, it really doesn't. I was looking through this comprehensive new research article by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover, and it's titled, Why Gen AI Productivity Gains Remain Elusive.
Oh, yeah, he pulls some fascinating numbers in that one.
He does. He pulls numbers from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics that are honestly just staggering, but like in the most disappointing way possible.
Yeah.
Just to give you some context, U.S. non-farm productivity is basically the standard metric we use to measure how much value the average American worker produces per hour. And in the first quarter of 2025, that productivity grew by a measly more 0.3%.
Which is, statistically speaking, basically insignificant.
Right. And if you stretch the timeline out and look at the 7-year average leading up to early 2025, productivity growth was sitting at 2.1% annually.
And that number is exactly the same as the historical average.
Yes. Stretching all the way back from 1947 to 2026. Like, think about that. We have deployed the most advanced, powerful language models in human history. ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot into millions of offices, and the needle on the global productivity speedometer just hasn't moved a single millimeter.
An inch.
Okay, let's unpack this. Is Gen AI actually making you and me faster at our individual jobs, or is it just creating a completely different, highly complex kind of busy work? That is our mission for this deep dive.
Well, to get to the bottom of that mystery, we really have to draw a very sharp line between two concepts that Dr. Westover highlights, and that's apparent productivity and realized productivity.
Okay, apparent versus realized.
Exactly. Confusing these two concepts is basically the root cause of why so many corporate AI rollouts are just failing right now. Apparent productivity is highly visible.
Like typing speed or something.
Right. It's when an individual uses an AI tool to do a single isolated task much faster than they used to. Drafting an email, summarizing a 50-page PDF, maybe writing a block of code on a dashboard that looks like a massive win.
Sure, yeah.
But realized productivity only happens when the time saved on that isolated task actually translates into broader, measurable organizational value. Like, did the company ship a better product to the market? Did they reduce the overall workforce needed to achieve that specific output?
So let me translate that to a real desk just to make sure I'm following. If I use AI to write a quarterly analysis in 10 minutes instead of 4 hours, my apparent productivity is just through the roof.
Absolutely.
But if my manager still takes 3 days to manually review that report because they don't trust the AI, and then the legal team still spends a week vetting it, the company didn't actually move any faster.
Exactly. The realized productivity is zero.
Wow. Zero.
That is the exact bottleneck. And the research data reflects this massive disconnect between, well, buying the tools and actually getting the value.
Yeah.
If you look at the mid-2024 Accenture report, it found that 65% of organizations were experimenting with Gen AI.
Okay.
And 40% claimed to be actively deploying it.
But I have to question what deploying it actually means in a corporate setting. Because usually that just means IT bought an enterprise license and emailed everyone a login credential saying, here is your corporate AI assistant. Go forth and be highly efficient.
Yeah, that is the reality for most of those companies. They're distributing these incredibly powerful tools without altering the underlying structures of how the work is actually accomplished.
Which seems crazy.
It does, but to be fair, the initial laboratory evidence made that seem like a completely foolproof strategy. Dr. Westover cites this really famous study by Noy and Zhang.
Oh, I think I read this one.
Yeah, it showed that professionals using Gen AI for writing tasks completed them 37% faster, while simultaneously seeing an 18% increase in the quality of the output.
See, if I'm an executive reading that study, I'm thinking, well, I don't need to change my business model at all.
Right. Why would you?
I just buy the software, hand it out, and watch my workforce instantly become 37% faster.
But the fatal flaw in that logic is that a controlled laboratory test is not a modern, chaotic office environment. When knowledge workers take these tools out into the wild, they immediately run into what a Delacroix study with Boston Consulting Group termed the jagged frontier of AI capability.
The jagged frontier.
Yeah.
That's a great term. So let me guess what that actually means mechanically. It means I can ask an AI to write a really complex Python script, and it works flawlessly on the first try, but then I ask it to do a basic logic puzzle or maybe summarize a nuanced legal contract, and it confidently hallucinates completely incorrect information.
Yes, that is the jagged frontier in action.
Because I never quite know where the edge of its competence is.
Exactly. Large language models are essentially hyper-advanced predictive text engines, right? They're not logic engines. Inside their capability frontier, the boost is just incredible.
Yeah, it feels like magic.
But because the frontier is jagged and unpredictable, users constantly stray outside of it without even realizing it. And when a user over-relies on AI for a task just outside its competence, their performance plummets. They generate deeply flawed work.
And then they have to fix it.
Right. Anytime that worker initially saved on the drafting phase gets entirely swallowed up by the cleanup phase. They have to fact-check the hallucinations, edit out that generic robotic AI tone, and they constantly have to fight against Parkinson's law.
Ah, Parkinson's law. Being the old adage that work will naturally expand to fill the time allotted for its completion.
Yes. So if you have a 3-hour block in your calendar to write a strategic brief, and the AI generates a draft in 5 minutes, you are highly unlikely to just submit it at minute 6.
No, of course not.
You will spend the next 2 hours and 55 minutes tinkering with the phrasing, reprompting the AI, second-guessing the output. The time is consumed anyway.
Okay, so instead of a 200-mile-per-hour sports car, it's more like we gave everyone a literal genius intern who processes data at light speed but possesses absolutely zero common sense or industry context.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
And if you just hand that intern a login and say, do my job, you're going to spend vastly more time fixing their bizarre mistakes than if you had just, done the work yourself in the first place.
What's fascinating here is how researchers Kiranam and Ravendran categorize this exact problem. They call it scaling friction.
Scaling friction.
Yeah, they point out that even if one worker manages their AI intern perfectly and gets a speed boost, that speed just gets bogged down by team coordination and measurement complexities.
Because no one else is on the same page.
Right. Like, if half of a marketing team is using AI heavily and the other half flat out refuses to use it at all, the friction of coordinating between those two camps skyrockets. Management has to step in. They have to establish new operational norms, new quality baselines, entirely new review protocols. And all of that organizational overhead just eats your theoretical 37% speed boost alive.
Man, and the research shows that if you let these unchecked genius interns loose across a whole company, they don't just fail to scale, they actively cause damage.
They really do.
The side effects are something every listener needs to be highly vigilant about in their own daily workflow. Dr. Westover's synthesis highlights a few major pitfalls, starting with a term coined by Ammirati, which is workslop.
Workslop. Is that a highly evocative term that, honestly, perfectly diagnoses the aesthetic of our current digital era?
It really does. Workslop is basically AI-generated content that technically checks the boxes of whatever prompt you gave it, but it completely lacks genuine human insight.
Right. It's just perfectly punctuated, grammatically flawless, algorithmic filler.
Exactly. The research brings up this case study with Herman Miller, the legacy office furniture manufacturer. They decided to encourage their design teams to use GenAI during the ideation phase of their workflow.
Okay. Makes sense on paper.
Right. And mechanically, the AI did exactly what it was asked to do. The designers started walking into client meetings with these visually stunning, photorealistic, incredibly polished concept pitches.
However, the clients receiving those pitches were incredibly dissatisfied.
Oh, they hated them.
Yeah.
The clients complained that while the designs were pretty, they were conceptually shallow. Because design isn't just about making a chair look cool, right? It's about solving spatial, ergonomic, and material problems.
And the AI just skipped all the problem solving and went straight to generating aesthetics.
Right. So, to fix this huge tidal wave of work slop, Herman Miller leadership actually had to implement mandatory review protocols. Designers were forced to manually articulate the strategic why behind every single AI-generated concept. And the irony here is just thick. By forcing designers to document the critical thinking that the AI skipped, the company actually added significant time to the very ideation process the AI was supposed to accelerate.
And we see this extending far beyond creative industries, too, into highly rigid, quantitative environments as well.
Really? Like where?
Well, researchers Hallweg and Davenport documented a related phenomenon they called process slop. They studied corporate audit processes where auditors began using AI to automatically generate their financial findings and compliance documentation.
Oh, that sounds risky.
Very. Because the mechanics of an audit rely entirely on a chain of trust. When the stakeholders receiving those audit reports realized an AI wrote them, that chain just broke.
Because how do they know the AI didn't just make it up?
Exactly. They started questioning whether the AI actually understood the nuanced context of a specific financial anomaly, or if it was just blindly pattern matching historical data. And once that trust degrades, the audit loses its credibility.
Yeah, totally.
So then the organization has to mandate extra layers of human verification just to double-check the AI, which, again, entirely negates the initial speed of automation.
But wait, I have to push back here a little bit. Isn't the whole point of this technology to offload the boring, repetitive stuff?
Well, sure.
Like, if I'm a financial analyst, I absolutely want the AI doing the initial data scraping and pattern matching so I can, preserve my mental energy for reading the final summary. Why is it suddenly a bad thing if the AI does the heavy lifting for me?
Offloading repetitive tasks isn't inherently bad, no. But it introduces a severe, long-term risk of what researchers Schultz and Heckman call cognitive atrophy.
Cognitive atrophy?
Yes. They conducted studies on university students who heavily relied on AI to write essays and synthesize research. And when those students were later tested without the AI, their baseline critical thinking and structural writing skills had measurably degraded.
Wow.
The brain is a muscle. If you outsource the resistance training to an algorithm, the muscle wastes away.
Okay, I can see that happening to, like, a 19-year-old undergrad who's still learning how to think, but surely seasoned corporate professionals have already built those mental muscles.
You would think so, but the data actually suggests otherwise. Accenture had to modify its internal AI usage guidelines for their elite consultants.
Wait, really? The elite consultants?
Yeah, these are highly trained, highly compensated professionals. They were using AI to do all their initial analytical heavy lifting synthesizing client data, generating strategic frameworks, right before big client meetings.
Which sounds super efficient.
It does. But when those same consultants walked into live, in-person client workshops where they had to think on their feet, pivot their strategy based on emotional cues, and answer complex questions in real time, they struggled.
Oh, because they didn't really know the material.
Exactly. Because they hadn't wrestled with the raw data themselves. They lacked the intimate familiarity required to be strategically agile. This is the core of what Malik and Malik term the productivity illusion.
The productivity illusion. So they essentially outsourced the warm-up and then immediately pulled a muscle during the game.
That captures it perfectly. The productivity illusion is the danger of mistaking apparent efficiency for actual capability.
Right.
You cannot outsource the foundational layers of your critical thinking to an algorithm and then expect the upper floors of your intellect to remain structurally sound when tested.
Because if the foundation is built by a machine, the human house crumbles under pressure.
Exactly.
Okay, let's take a breath and look at the whole board here. We have workslop, process slop, and cognitive atrophy. And mechanically, all of these failures stem from the exact same mistake, right? Taking a shiny new AI tool and just plugging it into an old legacy workflow.
Right.
Which means the only actual way forward is to completely tear down the old process and rebuild the highway from scratch.
Exactly. It requires an organizational shift from simply adopting new software to engaging in fundamental business process reengineering.
Klarna, the massive Swedish fintech company, is actually a brilliant example of this in the source material.
Yes, their customer service overhaul.
Right. When they integrated AI into customer service, they didn't just buy a GenAI chatbot and slap it on the front page of their old support portal. They completely redesigned the entire customer journey around the AI's specific jagged frontier.
They acknowledged its limitations.
Exactly. They mapped out the exact mechanics. The AI handles routine queries autonomously, but the moment a query hits a specific complexity threshold, there is a hard-coded handoff protocol. The AI instantly packages the context of the conversation and routes it to a specialized human agent who just takes over seamlessly.
Which is brilliant.
Right. By restructuring the actual flow of work, Klarna cut their average resolution time by a staggering 2.5 hours.
And notice where the value was generated in that case study. The realized productivity didn't come from forcing a human customer service rep to type their responses 37% faster.
Right.
It came from structurally redesigning the routing of the work itself. Thomson Reuters achieved something similar, though their structural redesign focused on breaking down internal departmental silos.
Oh, this was the cross-pollination between their legal researchers and their news division, right? Tell me how that actually worked mechanically.
Yeah, so in a traditional legacy workflow, a legal researcher analyzes a new, complex court decision. If they think it might make a good news story, they have to draft an email, pitch it to a news editor, wait for a response, schedule a meeting.
It's just highly inefficient, so it rarely ever happens.
Exactly. So instead of just giving the legal team AI to read cases faster, Thomson Reuters built a customized AI system that constantly monitors the legal developments the researchers are analyzing and systematically flags decisions with high public interest value directly to the news division's dashboards.
That's so smart.
Right. The AI acts as an automated, structural bridge between two departments that rarely communicated. The value wasn't individual task speed. It was discovering insights that would have otherwise remained trapped in isolation.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If you are listening to this deep dive right now to prep for a strategy meeting tomorrow, you might not be the CEO.
Probably not.
You probably don't have the institutional power to redesign your entire company's operational infrastructure. You can't just mandate a Klarna-style overhaul. So how do you apply this concept of workflow decomposition to your own daily desk?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, workflow decomposition is incredibly empowering for the individual contributor. It requires you to sit down, audit your own daily responsibilities, and categorize every task into 3 distinct buckets.
Okay, what are the buckets?
Bucket 1, tasks the AI can execute reliably and autonomously because they sit safely inside its capability frontier.
So the safe stuff.
Right. Bucket 2, high-stakes tasks that require your uncompromised human judgment, empathy, and strategic context. And then bucket 3, iterative tasks where human-AI collaboration yields the best results, like brainstorming or challenging your own assumptions.
Got it.
By mapping your own desk this granularly, you stop expecting the AI to magically do your whole job, and you stop restricting it to just proofreading your commas.
But effectively managing those 3 buckets requires you to actually understand the mechanics of the tool you are using. Which brings us to the massive failure of corporate training.
Oh, it is a huge failure.
The research is brutally clear on this. Generic, company-wide webinars are completely useless. Generic GenAI training is like handing an employee a generic manual on how to operate heavy machinery when their specific daily job requires flying a rescue helicopter in a thunderstorm.
That's spot on. Davenport and Middle's research emphasizes that true AI literacy demands contextual competence. An employee needs to understand how the LLM functions specifically within the constraints and vocabulary of their distinct domain.
And Bosch, the German multinational engineering company, figured this out mechanically. They realized you have to segment the training based on the workflow.
They did.
So they didn't just host a mandatory company-wide Zoom call. They took their engineering teams and trained them exclusively on how to use AI for thermal design optimization and structural simulations.
Which is exactly what they do all day.
Right. Then they took their procurement teams and trained them specifically on how to use AI to spot liability clauses in 50-page vendor contracts. By tailoring the training to the exact context of the worker, Bosch saw their active AI adoption rate skyrocket to over 60%.
Wow.
Whereas their previous generic training had adoption languishing below 20%.
Context is the only way to build mechanical trust. If you show a seasoned procurement manager a generic AI writing a fun poem about a dog, they will immediately dismiss the tool as a toy.
Obviously.
But if you show them how to prompt the AI to extract pricing tiers from a complex supplier agreement, you instantly have their full attention. However, contextual training is only one half of the solution.
What's the other half?
Implementing quality governance. How do you construct guardrails to prevent the work slop and process slop we discussed earlier?
Right. If the AI is going to hallucinate because of the jagged frontier, you need a net to catch the mistakes.
And this is where establishing a risk-based approach to governance becomes absolutely non-negotiable. Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center provides a stellar example of a human-in-the-loop architecture.
Okay. How does theirs work?
They utilize AI to listen to physician-patient interactions and automatically draft the clinical notes. Now, in a healthcare setting, the stakes are literally life and death.
Yeah, you cannot afford an AI hallucination regarding a medication dosage.
Exactly. So mechanically, the system is designed never to push those notes directly into the permanent electronic medical record.
The doctors have to serve as the final checkpoint.
Yes, but the system actually aids them in that check. The AI actively highlights any specific sentences or medical terms where its own internal confidence score is low.
Oh, that's clever.
It is. It might highlight a complex diagnosis in yellow, mechanically directing the physician's attention exactly to where human verification is most critical. This architecture protects the patient from errors, maintains the absolute integrity of the medical record, and still securely saves the doctor hours of administrative typing.
Which is an architecture you can build for yourself. If you understand how to apply a risk-based approach to your own output, you can let the AI fly autonomously through low-stakes internal update emails, but mandate intense line-by-line human review for a high-stakes external financial model.
Absolutely.
But this brings up a massive structural problem. If we've decomposed our workflows, contextualized our training, and instituted human-in-the-loop governance, how do we actually measure if any of this is working?
It's the million-dollar question.
Because if management is still just tracking how many emails we send per hour, we're going to drive the workforce straight into burnout.
Resolving that tension requires abandoning our legacy metrics of success. Let's look at how Boston Consulting Group handled this in a highly controlled experiment.
The GPT-4 study, right?
Yes. They gave a segment of their elite consultants access to GPT-4, which, for context, is the underlying language model powering many of these corporate AI tools. They monitored the entire workflow mechanically. And they found that while the AI absolutely saved the consultants significant time on the initial drafting of research summaries and slide decks, the total project timelines delivered to the client did not shrink by a single day.
Wait, if they were drafting slides in 2 hours instead of 10, what were they doing with the other 8 hours?
They reinvested that saved time into the human elements of the job.
Wow.
The teams used the surplus hours to conduct deeper competitive analysis, pressure test their own strategic assumptions, and engage in more thorough communication with the client. If BCG's leadership had only measured success by time saved, the experiment would have looked like a massive failure of ROI or return on investment.
Right, because it took the same amount of time.
Exactly. But the true ROI wasn't producing the same work faster. It was producing fundamentally superior work in the same amount of time.
It completely flips the corporate ROI calculation on its head. And it seems like the organizations actually succeeding here are the ones who realize that the people sitting at the desks know the workflow best.
100%.
Like Unilever, the global consumer goods giant. They completely bypassed the standard top-down mandate for AI adoption. Executive leadership didn't walk onto the factory floor and declare, "You must use this new software to increase your efficiency metrics by 10%.
Which never works anyway.
No, it never does. Instead, they inverted the process. They went to the floor workers and asked, what are the actual mechanical pain points in your daily routine?
And the workers, who understand the physical reality of the factory, pointed to highly specific problems, like the difficulty of predicting when a specific manufacturing centrifuge was going to fail, or the friction of optimizing shift schedules around sudden spikes in product demand.
Real problems.
Yes. And the AI was then deployed specifically to solve those worker-identified problems.
Maersk, the massive global shipping and logistics company, executed a very similar strategy through a mechanism they call federated innovation.
Federated innovation.
Yeah. The central corporate IT team in headquarters didn't dictate how the AI should be used. They merely established the strict security rules and data privacy guardrails. Then, they handed the tools to the regional teams and let them build out their own distinct applications.
Well, that makes so much sense.
Right. The teams operating out of Asia built AI tools specifically to predict and navigate complex port congestion because that was their daily nightmare. Meanwhile, the teams in Europe utilized the exact same underlying AI models to automate the translation of Byzantine customs documentation.
And we see this exact same bottom-up dynamic at the Cleveland Clinic. The hospital administration allowed the frontline nurses and doctors to actively dictate the functional requirements for new AI tools.
Rather than IT just handing it to them.
Exactly. This ensured that the technology seamlessly integrated into the actual mechanical realities of a chaotic hospital ward, rather than having an isolated tech team force a shiny new toy onto a staff that didn't even need it.
So the grand multi-trillion-dollar secret to navigating this hyper-advanced artificial intelligence revolution
Yeah.
is actually just putting down the spreadsheets and listening to your human workers.
This raises an important question that every listener, whether you are a manager or an individual contributor, really needs to ask.
Hmm.
How does your organization define value?
Mm.
Are you measuring success by pulling a dashboard report on how many employees logged into a GenAI tool this week? Or are you measuring if employee burnout has measurably decreased, if client satisfaction scores have improved, and if the foundational quality of your product has elevated? Implementing granular productivity monitoring like tracking employee task completion times down to the minute to see if the AI made them faster only generates intense anxiety. Workers will mechanically start gaming the system to simply appear productive, generating endless workslop, which completely destroys genuine innovation.
So what does this all mean? If you are listening to this, trying to figure out how to survive and thrive in the 2026 Gen AI landscape, the synthesis of Dr. Westover's research is incredibly clear.
It is.
Extracting realized productivity from generative AI is not a quick 30-day sprint to save an hour on your email inbox. It is a years-long deliberate journey. You have to mechanically break down and rebuild your actual workflows.
From the ground up.
Yes. You have to demand training that fits the specific context of your daily tasks, and above all, you have to architect systems that keep human judgment strictly in the loop.
And I would argue that your human judgment is only going to increase in market value. Dr. Westover's research touches briefly on a concept that I believe will honestly define the next decade of business, and that is interorganizational AI ecosystems.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Think about complex supply chains, client-provider relationships, and business-to-business, or B2B, contracting. As the global business world becomes absolutely flooded with AI-generated content, just drowning in all the work slop and process slop we've analyzed today, we are rapidly approaching a paradigm where verified interorganizational trust becomes a premium commodity.
Oh, I can entirely see that. Like a corporate badge of authenticity in a sea of algorithms.
Exactly that.
Oh.
Imagine a near future where lucrative B2B contracts legally demand AI-free or human-certified labels on strategic deliverables.
Wow.
It will function much like how we actively look for organic labels on our food today to ensure we aren't paying premium prices for synthetic filler. Going forward, your most valuable professional skill will not be how fast you can prompt an LLM to generate a 50-page report.
No.
Your ultimate value will be how effectively you can prove the distinctly human insight, the strategic empathy, and the unautomatable critical thinking behind your work.
That is a deeply provocative thought to leave on. The premium of being human in an automated world. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the real mechanisms behind the Gen AI productivity paradox. Hopefully, the next time you find yourself managing that genius intern without common sense, you'll know exactly how to structure their workflows so you both succeed. Keep questioning the consensus, and we will see you next time.